June 4, 1943. Norfolk Naval Base, Virginia. The morning haze clung to the harbor like a living thing as German prisoners of war shuffled down the gangplanks after 2 relentless weeks at sea. Among them was Unteroffizier Hermann Bircher. His legs trembled from the long Atlantic crossing, yet his mind stayed sharp, absorbing every impossible detail before him. None of it resembled the world painted by 3 years of Nazi propaganda. Across the humming docks, white and black American workers toiled shoulder to shoulder, guiding towering cranes that looked like steel giants from another age. Women in grease-streaked coveralls ran heavy equipment with effortless precision, while children darted through the gates shouting newspaper headlines. A brass band played upbeat war tunes as a crowd cheered at a Bond rally within sight of massive warships. Civilians strolled freely near one of the most powerful naval bases on Earth, seemingly unbothered by the presence of thousands of enemy soldiers. Bircher turned to a fellow prisoner, muttering in disbelief, "Die Spinnen. Die Amerikaner. The Americans are insane." Years later, he would describe that moment in his 1952 memoir, Behind Barbed Wire, one of the most vivid records of German prisoners held in the United States. What shook him that morning wasn't only the vastness of Norfolk, miles of piers, roaring cranes, and warehouses that stretched to the horizon, it was the normalcy. America was at war, yet it looked like peace had never left its shores. By the end of the conflict, more than 425,000 German POWs would be shipped to camps across the U.S. What they witnessed there didn't just erode their loyalty to Hitler, it cracked the foundation of Nazi ideology itself. Processing began almost immediately. Bircher called it the first impossibility. In Germany, prisoners were tools or burdens, treated as subhuman. The Geneva Convention was a document quoted only when useful. But here, at Norfolk, American officers read the convention aloud, in perfect German, explaining rights, rations, and even religious accommodations. Red Cross parcels were handed out. Jewish American soldiers, men whose very names would have been death warrants in Germany, calmly explained that kosher meals were available for Jewish captives. Some Germans laughed nervously, sure it was a cruel joke. It wasn't. Then came the medical inspections. Wounded men were given penicillin, medicine almost mythical in their own hospitals. Infections were treated with urgency, wounds bandaged with care. One Swiss Red Cross inspector would later note that the medical treatment for German prisoners equaled or surpassed that given to American soldiers. Even more shocking, some of the medics were African American. One German officer later wrote of his astonishment when a black technician drew his blood, a simple act in America, yet one punishable by law in Nazi Germany. The astonishment only deepened in the mess hall. Prisoners and Americans ate under the same roof. Not the same tables, but the same food, the same air. As German sailors lifted trays of steaming meals, American sailors nearby laughed at a baseball broadcast, barely noticing their supposed enemies. Their journey inland multiplied the confusion. German POWs weren't stuffed into boxcars, but seated in cushioned passenger coaches. The trains stopped at major stations, where civilians gathered to watch. From the windows of Washington's Union Station, prisoners saw a world they had been told didn't exist: wives kissing husbands goodbye, children waving flags, teenagers laughing over milkshakes, all just a few steps from enemy soldiers guarded lightly. Even America's factories made no attempt to hide. In Germany, every plant was camouflaged. But here, the Glenn L. Martin aircraft plant in Baltimore blazed with open confidence. Parking lots were full, bombers gleamed in daylight, and the night sky glowed from steel mills unafraid of spies. America's productivity was not a secret weapon, it was a spectacle. By the time they reached Camp Hearn in Texas, many were reeling. And the camp itself defied belief. Instead of straw pallets, there were wooden barracks with electric lights, indoor plumbing, and hot water. Mattresses, sheets, and blankets replaced bare survival. Recreation halls held ping-pong tables, pianos, even libraries. Lieutenant Colonel Cecil Stiles, the commander, spoke flawless German. He told them they could elect spokesmen, organize activities, even manage internal affairs. To men raised under dictatorship, it sounded absurd, a trap or a weakness. But it was neither. Over time, freedom took root in unlikely soil. Prisoners worked local farms, earning tokens to spend in canteens stocked with chocolate, cigarettes, even guitars. They labored beside Mexican-American and black workers whose very existence shattered Nazi racial myths. That Christmas, the entire town of Hearn came together to give gifts to their enemies. World War I veterans donated candy and tobacco to the very men who might have killed them. The camp served a feast unlike anything Germans had tasted in years: roast turkey, ham, pies, even beer and wine. Some prisoners wept openly. In that moment, something broke, and something new began. They saw that kindness was not weakness, but a deeper kind of strength. Each day brought new contradictions. African American guards commanded respect, yet couldn't eat in restaurants where German prisoners were welcome. American farmers mocked Roosevelt in public with no fear of reprisal. Newspapers printed satire of the president, criticism of the war effort, and letters from opposition parties. Democracy didn't hide from dissent, it thrived on it. Gradually, the transformation spread. Men who once swore loyalty to Hitler began reading banned German novels from the camp library. Others took correspondence courses from American universities. Camp newspapers shifted from propaganda to discussions of philosophy and freedom. Bircher later wrote that the true turning point came at that Christmas feast. "These people, whose sons we tried to kill, gave us gifts," he wrote. Their kindness wasn't weakness. It was the strength of a nation that already knew it had won, not only the war, but the peace that would follow. When the war ended, most German POWs returned home changed. They no longer saw America as soft or decadent, but as a place where freedom itself was power. Thousands carried those lessons back to a broken Germany. Some returned for good, marrying Americans and raising children in the country that once imprisoned them. By 1946, nearly 500,000 German prisoners had lived behind American fences. Fewer than 1% ever tried to escape. In later years, surveys showed that most held favorable views of democracy, and of America itself. Many became leaders in West Germany's rebirth, shaping the foundation of what would become the Transatlantic Alliance. The story of German prisoners of war in America is far more than a historical footnote. It is proof that the greatest victories are not always won with guns, but with grace. America crushed Nazi Germany with its armies, but it conquered Nazism with something far simpler: Humanity. The German soldiers came expecting weakness. Instead, they found a nation so strong it could afford mercy. They arrived as enemies. Many left as admirers. Some even left as friends. And that quiet, human transformation may have been one of the truest victories of the Second World War.